Every time the mail comes, I do the same thing. I pick up the envelope, walk to the window, and stand there for a few seconds before I open it. My neighbor asked me once why I stand at the window so long. I couldn't explain it to him. How do you explain to someone that you're afraid of your own mail? I'm 89 years old. I spent 30 years as a bank teller, counting other people's money, checking other people's signatures, catching other people's mistakes. I knew how to look at numbers the way some people read a letter, steady, methodical, no fuss. And here's what I'll tell you, because I've got nothing left to lose and no reason to stay quiet. In 30 years of handling other people's money, I never once properly checked my own. Not once. You probably think that's impossible. You think a professional teller, a man who knew every cent that passed through his window, couldn't miss something that obvious. I thought the same thing. Until 2019. It didn't happen the way it does in movies. No crash, no late-night phone call with the scary music underneath. It was a regular Tuesday in October, and my grandson Caleb, he was 15 then, was messing around on my laptop because his phone had died. He wanted to look something up, and I was dozing in my chair. Then he shook me awake, gently, carefully, like he was afraid I might break. "Grandpa," he said, "there's something weird here." He turned the screen toward me. It was my bank account page, still open. I'd never logged out. There was a number on the screen. I looked at it once, then again. Then I asked him to leave the room. $214,000. That's what I had saved over a lifetime. And it was gone, not reduced, not down. Gone, like someone tipped a glass and poured the water on the floor. The account showed something around $800. $800. I called Brian. His number was disconnected. I called his office. The recording said the number was no longer in service. I sent him an email. It bounced back. Brian was gone. Quiet, polite, always smiling Brian, who had sat across from me at that neat desk for 15 years and said the same thing every single time. "Just sign here," he said, and I did. 15 years, every single time. I put my name on papers I hadn't read because I told myself he knew better than me. He was the professional. He knew what he was doing. After Caleb left the room, I sat in that chair for about 2 hours. I didn't cry. I just sat there and tried to understand how it happened, how a man who had checked other people's signatures for 30 years could sign his own name 30 times and never once ask a question. Evelyn passed at 81, 8 years before all this. She always said the same thing. I heard it so often, I stopped hearing it. "Walter, don't let strangers handle your money. Keep an eye on it yourself." She said it about our neighbor, who hired a property manager and then spent 3 years trying to figure out where the repair money went. She said it calmly, without pushing, the way you'd remind someone to grab an umbrella before rain. I nodded and kept signing Brian's papers. I was around 69 when I met him. I was finishing up my last few years at the bank and thinking, I need to do something with the money before I retire. He came recommended with a folder of documents and a soft voice. Said he worked with people who were getting close to retirement. Said he understood what it was like to work your whole life and want it to amount to something. I believed him. You know what's almost funny? Funny is the wrong word, but I don't have a better one. I was a bank teller. I knew what a statement was. I knew how to read account activity, how to spot something that didn't add up, how to ask the right questions when a customer came in with a problem. I told people why it mattered to watch their accounts twice a month for 30 years. And I didn't open my own statements for years at a time. Brian sent me quarterly reports, nice-looking papers with a logo, with little graphs. I'd put them in a folder in the bottom drawer of the dresser and tell myself, if he's sending reports, everything must be fine. He's the professional. He's the man I'm paying to watch. You're sitting there right now thinking, how could anyone do that? I hear you. But let's be honest for a second. When's the last time you opened your bank statement and actually read it, line by line? Not just glanced at the balance, but really read it. Every transaction, every single movement, last month, 6 months ago. Do you even remember? Most of us just look at the number at the bottom and move on. I did the same thing, except I didn't even look at the number. Brian was looking at it for me. There's another part of this I'm not comfortable talking about. Brian used to bring documents to my house sometimes. He'd sit right here at this kitchen table, drink his tea, talk about the market, about strategies. I didn't understand half of what he said, if I'm being straight with you. Then he'd spread out the papers, 3-4 pages sometimes in one visit. I'd ask, "What's this?" He'd explain. I'd nod. I didn't understand, but I nodded, because it felt embarrassing to ask a second time. I thought questions were an admission of weakness, especially for a man who'd spent 30 years in a bank. I was supposed to understand, wasn't I? One Christmas, my son Dennis drove in. He was around 50 then, and he happened to see the report folder sitting on the table. He flipped through one and asked, "Dad, do you actually read these?" I said, "Sure." He gave me a look, but didn't say anything more. We both went quiet. That was about 5 years before everything came out. Either one of us could have stopped it right there. We didn't. Caleb hadn't gone far. He was sitting in the hallway waiting. Then he came back in without asking, sat down next to me and said, "Grandpa, tell me everything you know about this man." And I told him. Name, office, phone number, an address that turned out to be an empty building. Had been for over a year. Caleb typed everything into his phone, fast, without a word. Then he turned the screen toward me. There were a few articles. Turns out Brian had already come up in complaints filed with the Securities Commission a long time ago, before he ever came to me. I sat there staring at the screen, thinking one thing. Evelyn was right. Not a little bit right. Completely. Absolutely right. And I hadn't been there beside her to say it. Then Caleb did one more thing. He pulled up a simple calculator and wrote down some numbers. 214,000. That wasn't just money. That was the difference between an empty account and a peaceful old age. 30 years in the making. He didn't say a word. He just set the phone in front of me. I looked at that number, and for the first time in 2 hours, my hands started shaking. "Just sign here." And I signed. 15 years, 48 quarters, more than 100 signatures on papers I never read, and I called it trust the whole time. But trust isn't when you don't look. trust is when you look and believe anyway. I didn't look. What I had wasn't trust, and it wasn't faith. It was cowardice and laziness dressed up in politeness, and a habit of deferring to someone else's authority. You want to know what it feels like when a man who spent 30 years checking other people's signatures realizes his own signature wiped out everything he saved? Not the bank, not the market, not the economy. His own signature. It took me a few days to sit with that. Caleb helped me call the police, then the financial regulator, then a legal aid service for seniors. They took the case. Brian was eventually found, working under a different name in another state. Some money came back, a small piece of it. Most of that, $214,000, is gone just as completely as Brian himself. The first thing I did once things settled down a little was go to the bank in person. Didn't call, didn't write. Went myself the old-fashioned way, sat down across from the branch manager and told her, "Show me every movement on this account for the last 15 years. She looked at me like she wasn't sure she'd heard right. Then she nodded and printed it all out. The stack of paper was something to look at. I took it home, sat down at the kitchen table, the very same one where Brian used to spread his documents, and I started reading, line by line, like a teller, because that's what I was, for God's sake, even if I'd managed to forget it for 15 years. It was hard, not because it was complicated. I understood every line. It was hard because I could see the money leaving. Slowly, steadily, in small amounts that don't catch your eye on their own. That's exactly how it works, the lawyer explained to me later. Not all at once, a little at a time, until there's nothing left. Dennis flew in a week later. I hadn't asked him to. Caleb called his dad on his own. We sat there that evening, Dennis looking at the same stack of statements for a long time without talking. Then he said, "Why didn't you tell me about Brian sooner? I would have looked." I didn't know what to say, because the answer was simple and ugly. I thought I could handle it myself, or rather, that Brian would handle it for me. Dennis didn't blame me for it. He picked up his phone and found a legal aid service that worked with elderly fraud victims, mostly free of charge. The lawyer was young, serious. He walked me through every step without rushing. First, the report, then the documents, then wait. While the case was going, I opened a new account at a different bank by myself, with what little I had left, and I set up alerts on my own for every movement, every withdrawal, every transfer. Caleb showed me how to do it on the phone. It took about 40 minutes and a lot of his patience, but I got it figured out. The first alert came 2 days later. I'd taken out some cash at the ATM for groceries. The phone gave a little buzz, and there was the number on the screen. My number, for my account. One I could see myself. The second it changed. It was a strange feeling, almost like being back behind the teller window, except this time it was my own window. I think about Evelyn a lot. I think about what she used to say, and how I'd nod and not really hear her. "Walter, don't let strangers handle your money. Keep an eye on it yourself." She wasn't a financial expert. She just knew people, and she knew me, knew that I was good at hiding behind someone else's authority when something scared me. For 15 years, I told myself I was trusting a professional. But Evelyn never would have trusted someone she'd never watched work. She would have read every line, maybe twice. And I think that's why she kept saying the same thing to me, because she saw a man who was good at looking at other people's numbers and afraid to look at his own. Last year, Caleb opened his first investment account. He was 18. He came over and said, "Grandpa, can you check this? Did I fill it out right?" I took the papers. I read slowly, every page, every clause, every condition. About 20 minutes. Caleb waited without saying anything. Then I told him, "This all looks right, but read this part again yourself." He read it, nodded, asked me why that part mattered. I explained. For the first time in my life, I had something real to say to my grandson about money, not as a teller, but as a man who lived it. I didn't get rich. I'm 89 years old. I'm not pretending I'm going to make it all back. But Caleb is starting at 19 with his eyes open, and I'm not ashamed of that. Not even at the price I paid. About 6 months after everything, my neighbor Mort, he's 88. We've known each other going on 20 years, came over one evening with some papers. He was working out some kind of deal with his nephew, buying a garage or something like it, and he needed a third co-signer. "Walter, it's just a formality," he said. "Just a signature, nothing more." I picked up the pen, literally picked it up and almost signed, and something inside me stopped my hand, like someone grabbed my wrist. I put the pen down. I said, "Mort, can I take this home and read it first?" He was a little surprised. We're old friends, and it probably seemed unnecessary to him. I took the papers anyway. I read for an hour, found a clause about joint liability for an amount I would not have liked. Called Dennis. Dennis said, "Don't sign." I didn't sign. Mort wasn't upset about it in the end. We're still neighbors. But I remember that evening clearly. I almost did it again, almost went back to the man I used to be. That's when Dennis said over the phone, "Dad, just go back to the rule. Read first, always." And here's what struck me. When Mort said, "Just a signature, nothing more," something tightened up inside me, because I had heard those words before, in a different voice, at a different table, for 15 years running. Just sign here. That phrase lives inside me now as a warning, not a permission. I call Dennis about once a month these days, not because something's wrong, it's because I need to say out loud to someone. I check the account, everything's there, everything's under control. He says, "Good, Dad." Sometimes he laughs a little. I laugh too. It's a strange little ritual for an 89-year-old, I know. But it settles me. I'm not scared of the mail anymore. Well, not as much. I still stand at the window and look at the envelope, but now I know what's inside, because I'm watching it myself. Every alert on the phone, every statement once a month, every piece of paper. Read it first, then sign. Call Dennis if you're not sure. None of that is hard. None of it is anything I didn't know how to do 30 years ago, standing behind that teller window. I won't leave Caleb a lot, but I'll leave it clean. No debts, no confusion, no papers, nobody read. And I'll tell him the story about Brian again, even though he already knows it. So he remembers. There's someone watching this right now who's looking at their advisor and thinking he's solid, that he's always been friendly, that he's never let them down. I was that person for a long time, and I was a professional bank teller who spent every working day telling customers to read their statements. I said it to people through that glass window. Then I went home and put my own reports in the bottom drawer of a dresser, unopened. Listen to me. Not because I'm smart. I proved the opposite with $214,000. But because I'm old, and I've got no reason to make anything sound better than it is, open your statement today, not tomorrow. Read it the way you'd read a letter from someone you're not entirely sure about. Every line, every transaction. That is exactly how you should read it. When someone puts a paper in front of you and says, "It's just a formality, just a signature," that's a signal, not a permission. Read it. If you don't understand it, call someone you trust. Dennis was waiting for my phone call for 15 years before I made it. Your kid, your niece, your neighbor, someone close to you can read a document. Ask them. That's not weakness. It's the only thing standing between you and an empty account. And when you slip, and you will because everyone does, just go back to the rule. Read first, always. I'm 89 years old. I stand at the window, I hold the envelope, and I know what's inside. That's not much, but it's mine. Evelyn used to say, "Don't let strangers handle your money, watch it yourself." I didn't listen. For 15 years he told me, "Just sign here," and I signed, and then I signed again. 48 quarters, over 100 times, until there was nothing left but $800 and a stack of nice-looking reports in the bottom drawer of a dresser. Don't do what I did. You still have time to read.